into First and Goal, the newest podcast presented by the Clutch Gene. My name is Kyle Layton. His name is Connor Hogan. He's got 4 questions to answer this episode. Let's get right into things. All right, so First and Goal, first subject of the day. Nick Wright this week came out with his prediction for the NFL Top 10, part of the NFL 100 that they were putting together. His top 10 list for that. And this was probably around Monday, Tuesday of last week. So since then, the actual NFL top 10 has come through. So just really quickly, before I get your reaction to that, I'm going to run through what Nick Wright had and what the actual one had. So Nick Wright's top 10 list was Patrick Mahomes, number 1, Aaron Donald, number 2, Derrick Henry, number 3, Aaron Rodgers, number 4, Jalen Ramsey, number 5, DeAndre Hopkins, number 6, Myles Garrett, number 7, Travis Kelce, number 8, Fred Warner, number 9, and Tom Brady at number 10. The NFL top 10 that they actually had real quick was Mahomes 1, Donald 2, Rodgers 3, Henry 4, Kelce 5, Adams 6, Brady 7, Hopkins 8, TJ Watt 9, and Josh Allen was number 10. So, Connor, what is your reaction to Nick Wright's top 10 list?
I'm not a huge fan of Nick Wright's top 10, to be totally honest. I starting like from Tom coming down to 1. I'm not mad about the Tom and Fred picks. Obviously, Tom getting up there in age, wins to the Super Bowl last year, still arguably the greatest leader in the NFL. Probably not the best QB talent anymore, but definitely the best leader. Fred Warner, arguably the best hybrid linebacker in the NFL right now, and a lot of people will argue Bobby Wagner and Devin White on this one. But I think Fred Warner with that Niners defense is scary, to say the least. Him in coverage and in the run game, I think he is the Bobby Wagner that we've been missing for 2 or 3 years at this point. But not mad at that. Travis Kelce, not a huge fan at 8. I would have liked to see Kittle there instead if we are having a tight end in the top 10. Not taking away from what Kelce does on the field, I think he is immensely helped by the speed of that Kansas City offense, which allows him to kind of sit in the zones, which he is so known for. But Kittle being able to do both the run blocking and pass catching side of the tight end position, I think that helps him a lot. I would have much rather seen him in there. Myles Garrett, obviously big disruptor. Not going to say anything bad about him. I have seen what he can do with a football helmet. So we're going to stay away from that one. D-Hop could probably be higher on this list if we're being honest with ourselves here. There's no real debate. I know people will bring up Devontae Adams a lot in this, but DeAndre Hopkins is just hands down, when you look at every aspect of receiving, I don't think anyone's going to argue that he lacks in much. Jalen Ramsey, having defensive backs on top 10 lists is hard for me to fathom, just because there are so many guys out there that are at Jalen's level at this point. I mean, we're looking at Xavier Howard. Even what I've seen of Jones in the preseason has been amazing. Jair Alexander has stepped up a lot in the past season. And then the top
Marlon
4.
Humphrey.
Yeah, Marlon Humphrey, too. I mean, I think he's going to be a menace back there for the Ravens this year. I think a lot of people are actually going to be scared to face that Ravens defense again, even with losing a couple guys. And then in that top 4, I don't think you're really going to argue with anyone at that. I think Rodgers probably could have gone 2 or 3. I don't know how he get bumped out of the top 3. Derrick Henry, I mean, I think he kind of speaks for himself. So does Patrick Mahomes. Aaron Donald, amazing. I think TJ Watt probably could have slipped in somewhere on this list too. I think he probably should have gone somewhere in the top 10 instead of Jalen Ramsey, and leaving Josh Allen off. Obviously, he's on the NFL's actual top 10 list. And that, 5 spot can probably be argued for a few guys who aren't Jalen Ramsey. But overall, it's not a great list. It's not a terrible list. I think Nick Wright did what Nick Wright does on this, which is favor his players who he talks about every freaking day.
Right.
But overall, I don't think anyone's going to be super upset at this list.
And you said, him favoring like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. I'm surprised Tyreek Hill didn't make an appearance on his list, because he's a major Chiefs fan.
Nicole Hardman could have been on here too if we're talking about Nick Wright. I mean,
yeah, honestly.
I'm like, at 10, just because when no one else is open, it's like, well, okay, Nick, let's move on here.
Yeah. I had a couple things on this. I don't necessarily agree with you on the Fred Warner part. I kind of question what he's doing on Nick Wright's top 10 list, just because I can name a couple players who are better than Fred Warner at the linebacker position. TJ Watt comes to mind. You mentioned him. Bobby Wagner, you also mentioned. Devin White, you also mentioned. Levante David. Like, all those guys I would probably take over Fred Warner. Not that he's a bad player by any means, but he just, I feel like there are players better than him at the position. It kind of seemed like a I watch defense pick, because you can't have all offensive players in your top 10. You brought up a good point on Jalen Ramsey. I really question how valuable a corner is. And I think in the history of the NFL, unless your name is Deion Sanders, I don't really know if there's ever been a corner worthy of top 5 in the league, like, in any given season. Like, Darrelle Revis might get up there. He's probably at one point close to that, Yeah,
but that was maybe, 1 or 2 seasons in his career where he really would have been there.
Right. That's what I mean. Is it Deion? Like, Deion's on another level. So separate Deion from everybody else. Like, I don't know if there's ever been a corner outside of Deion that is worthy of a top 5 position in the league. Like, top 5 player overall in any given season. Darrelle Revis being the exception. 2009 was pretty incredible for Darrelle Revis. There's always that chart that comes up online where he kept every major receiver in the league to under 50 yards or something like that. And then this is my hottest take, and I've been on this one for a while, and he's kind of proved me wrong. So I've softened it a little bit. But has Derrick Henry entered the area of being overrated? Because he's clearly the best running back in the league. Like, I'm not going to debate that. There was a point where I didn't think that either, and he's kind of proved me wrong. I had to soften that take a little bit. But how valuable is the best running back in the league? Like, he does a lot for the Titans, makes them able to do a ton of different things, but so does Christian McCaffrey. So does Ezekiel Elliott in his prime was like that, where he allowed the offense to do different things. Dalvin
Cook is now in that level of, completely altering the offense up there in Minnesota, I think. I think you're right. I think we will see it this season. I know Julio's getting up there in age. I know a lot of people aren't convinced what he's going to do down there in Tennessee. No matter what, you're going to have to game plan for Julio. The Julio Brown combo right now in Tennessee, I think, is going to cause issues. As much as people think, Julio's old, he's not what he was. And I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. But you now have 2 very large, very physical receivers on the edge, and you have an absolute unit in the backfield of Derrick Henry. So I think he might actually, I hate to say this, he might actually do better with them not being defenses won't be able to crowd the box anymore and just worry about AJ. Like, that's no longer a thing that defense is going to be able to do, because you will have Julio out there probably split wide by himself for the most part, just to draw. He's still going to draw a double team no matter what. I think defenses realize that, unless you have an elite corner out there, possibly a free safety just sitting up there in that high zone. But I think Derrick Henry this season, either it is proved that maybe, he's not the one and done answer there, or he's just going to thrive even more because they have another legitimate threat outside.
I mean, I don't disagree that he's a top 10 player. I just don't know about top 5, because both Nick Wright and the NFL Top 100 had Derrick Henry in their top 5, and I don't know if there's a running back that's worthy of that. I mean, maybe, you know, he's been so dominant. He had over 2,000 yards last season. We can't question any of that. Like, he's clearly a very good player, but I don't know. I just question the value, the value of a running back. And they had Corey Davis last year, but I think Julio, even at this, Corey Davis is a fine receiver, but I think Julio, even at this point in his career, is still better than Corey Davis is at that point in his. So moving on, 2nd and goal. All right. So second topic of the day, what's going on with Dak Prescott's shoulder injury? I am a Cowboys fan. I'm very concerned. Basically, the shoulder injury was described as more of a baseball injury. This was about 3 weeks ago, and there was very little detail going on there about it. And then to make matters worse, first of all, the Cowboys on their Twitter account said, there's no reason to worry, there's no reason to panic, but Dak Prescott's going in for an MRI. And I was like, isn't this every single reason to worry and panic? Adam Schefter then noted that Dak Prescott might not be fully back all year. Even more concerning. And Chris Sims noted that the throwing motion, Dak's throwing motion this year looks different, potentially to compensate for either the ankle or the shoulder or both injuries. But despite all of this, Jerry says Dak's good to go for week 1. Connor, are you convinced that Dak Prescott is good to go?
Not even close. As much as I want Dak to thrive, I think if I'm Cowboys fans, as you are, and the Cowboys organization in general, I would be almost borderline scared on what's going to happen with Dak. Like you said, they brought in, not only did they describe it as a baseball type throwing injury, they were bringing in baseball specialists, baseball rehab specialists, trying to figure out what was going on. Obviously, he goes back earlier this week. He went back, he threw in practice a little bit. From what I heard and what I read, he did very well in the limited throwing he had. I don't think that means he's out of the woods, especially with that MRI. He's coming off of that ankle as well, which I think is big. But if first of all, you know, a football and baseball motion, 2 very different things. If they're bringing in baseball experts to try and figure out what's wrong with a football throwing motion, I think that's more concern than most people are giving it credit for. Just because, I mean, it's an entirely, like you said, his throwing motion looks different. He's not throwing, he's not, you know, you're not bombing it down the field to CD, you're not bombing it down to Amari Cooper. It's probably, they were probably keeping him to under 15-yard throws. If I'm thinking how I would think as a coach to try and keep my star quarterback, who is on the block for a lot of money this year. Yeah,
a lot
Cowboys fans, I'm very, very concerned. Back into that, Zeke is not the Zeke of old. I think everyone knows that. And that offensive line is getting older by the day. So I'm very worried about Dak's motion. I'm also very worried about how the Cowboys can keep him safe the entire season if they can't rely on Zeke to kind of take the ease off of Dak being able to have to throw it 35 to 40 times a game.
Zeke lost a lot of weight on the offseason, and I'm hoping that means that he's back. Because there was a point last year where it was like, geez, who's this fucking freight train that we have in there? But I'm hoping that means the Zeke of old is back. But you're right, he hasn't really been back for probably a year and a half, 2 years now. So, you know, what's making me think that he's going to be back now? Offensive line is an issue. I've been saying it for years that we're getting way too old up front. Tyron Smith is not getting any younger. Travis Frederick already retired. You know, Zach Martin's the one guy you have on there that you can guarantee is going to be there 5 years from now. You know, that's it. To me, it seems like a really weird injury. And it's concerning because of how little info they've given out on this. Like, they haven't explained what the injury is. They haven't really explained why the baseball specialists were there, how it happened, none of it. So it's very little injury. And it seems like throughout the preseason, it got worse every single week. It seems like there was something new. You know, first it's no reason to worry he's getting an MRI. Then it's he might never be fully healthy all season. And then it's, yeah, his throwing motion looks different. He might be out for the first 4 weeks of the season. And now it's good to go. It just seems like it got progressively worse, and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to believe everything's okay. I don't know about that. And I'm kind of worried. I'm kind of worried that this might sound like hyperbole, but I'm worried that it's going to be a career-altering injury, and that he might never be the same. That's like, it's so weird. It's such a weird injury that it feels like that to me. Like, the best to compare it to is Markelle Fultz when he came out of college in the NBA. How he was 1 overall and could shoot, and all of a sudden videos came out where this guy couldn't shoot anymore, and his career was never the same after that. So another same situation, weird circumstances. No one really knew what happened, how it happened, but it happened, and the guy hasn't been the same. He's been serviceable, but he hasn't been the same. Dak Prescott is being paid too much money to be a serviceable quarterback. You know, he needs to be that guy that throws for 4,900 yards and 35 touchdowns in a season. He's being paid like that guy. So that needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's like, what did we throw that money at? You know, what did we get ourselves into here? We have a huge payroll. We have these receivers that are excellent but don't have a quarterback capable of throwing to them. I'm just concerned. I'm concerned that it's going to be a career-altering injury because, one, it's weird, and two, as a Cowboys fan, I know anything and everything that could possibly go wrong will go absolutely horrible when it gets the chance. We don't catch breaks like that. Our break is that, maybe he comes back 80%. That's the break we're looking at. I'm just concerned overall about the whole thing. I have a feeling it's some kind of career altering, and I like Dak. I really like Dak. Since he became the quarterback, I came to bat for Dak, and to see it be like this, I'm just concerned. I really am.
Yeah, and we've had conversations about Dak's contract and how it's going to look like, what the Cowboys are going to be able to do. And you're right. If this is something where Dak is not Dak anymore, and Dak being Dak is him bombing it down the field on a dime most of the time to Amari Cooper, to CeeDee Lamb, even when Tavon Austin was up there, just doing 100-yard sprints down the field to try and catch a ball, which he rarely did, but when he did, it looked good. It's scary, and Dallas being Dallas, as always, does not have a backup plan for if this goes south.
They don't.
Then you're sitting here with DiNucci,
Cooper Rush, Ben DiNucci.
Cooper, yeah, you're sitting there with two guys who are 6th, 7th round undrafted guys, and you have arguably one of the best offenses in football, player wise, if you go down their roster. And you're just like, okay, what do we do with this now? Because you don't have that dynamic guy in the backfield who is, one, a very large human being who can run the ball, make those throws, not only the deep throws, but mid-route, short routes when you need them. Yeah, you can have a guy who can, run a perfect route and hit his marks all the time. But if you don't have a guy who can hit him in those routes, what are you going to do? Right. You're just sitting there with, a bunch of Mercedes on the field, and you got a Ford Pinto throwing footballs in the backfield.
Yeah. My brother actually brought up an interesting point. Shout out to Mikey. He said that the Cowboys really should have gone after Gardner Minshew, and that it's a shame that the Eagles got him, because Gardner Minshew, despite losing out to Trevor Lawrence, is a capable quarterback. I've actually always liked Gardner Minshew, and he might not be a starter in the league. Maybe he's not that, but he's definitely a more than capable backup, someone who could run an offense, and that would be a great guy to have because you wouldn't have to rush Dak back. Gardner Minshew comes in, maybe he goes 2-2, 2-3, 3-2, some variation of that in the first couple games of the season. Dak comes in, takes over. You're in a good spot. And on one final note, I watched Tony Romo's career get destroyed by injuries, and I loved Tony Romo, and I just don't want to see the same thing happen to Dak. I don't want to live that nightmare again.
Could you imagine that for Cowboys fans, though? That would just be, back-to-back guys' careers just ruined because the Cowboys were like, oh, everything's fine. And it was very obviously in the eyes of everyone watching the NFL.
No, not just them. Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman retired early because of concussions. We can't catch a break. All right, 3rd and goal. All right, we're approaching the goal line. We're trying to punch it in here. So we've got some QB competitions in the NFL. Some have already been won. We'll go through those first, I guess. Jameis Winston versus Taysom Hill on the New Orleans Saints. Jameis beat Taysom Hill. They named Jameis the starter. Connor, was this the right move?
To be totally honest, I don't know if you're winning with either decision on this one. I understand Jameis Winston gets his eyes fixed. You know, he's not eating W's in the pregame huddle anymore. I don't think Taysom Hill was ever the answer in New Orleans. He's a great, utility player for that team. He's never going to let you down. But I don't know if Jameis is going to be their answer either. Obviously, he can bomb the ball. He's got a great arm. Whether it goes where it's supposed to or not is a totally different conversation. I don't think it was a win-win situation there in New Orleans as much as it was we have to choose. We don't have any other options. And I'm sure by week 5 or 6, they'll have a 2 QB system down there in New Orleans.
Yeah. I just thought it was funny how Taysom Hill was seen as the quarterback of the future, and Jameis Winston was seen as the fill-in quarterback for the next guy. Taysom Hill's fucking 31 years old. Jameis Winston's 27. What kind of narrative is this? Jameis Winston at least still has a couple years where you could be like, oh, he could still develop into something. I think Jameis was the right call. I think it could unlock something we haven't seen in this offense in years. Obviously, Drew Brees, all-time great, first ballot Hall of Famer, everything like that. But for the past, 3 years? Saints offense has been Saints offense has been limited to 15 yards or less.
I mean, slant boy is slant boy. Let's call it what it is. I mean,
I'm not gonna say it, but if you want to, all right. But I think Jameis is the right call, and it could go one of two ways. It's either the Saints crash and burn with Jameis Winston, and they do go to a 2 quarterback system. I think Taysom will still be heavily involved, or they unlock something in this and they go to the NFC Championship game. It's going to go one of those 2 ways.
and lose to the Vikings again.
Yeah. I don't know about that one. All right. Teddy Bridgewater beat out Drew Lock on the Denver Broncos. Drew Lock obviously in his 3rd year, I believe. This was his 3rd year. Teddy Bridgewater has been in the league for probably close to a decade now. A couple of different teams. Was Teddy Bridgewater the right call for the Broncos?
Absolutely. That's kind of a no-brainer for me. I think we've all seen that Elway is not doing a great job up there in Denver. I think we can give him credit for the Bradley Chubb drafting, but with Chubb's career pretty much following in the exact footsteps of Von Miller now with injuries and everything else. Getting Locke in there was a stretch to say the least. I think bringing in Teddy was the perfect call. Does Denver, struggle through this year? Yes. Do they win that many games? Probably not. I mean, the offense looks better and better every time you look at it on paper, but they don't really have anyone in that backfield, especially getting rid of Philip Lindsay, which might have been the worst decision for that organization in a decade. I fully support Teddy Bridgewater being back there. I don't think Drew Lock sees the field this year unless Teddy gets injured. But yeah, Denver's going to be, the Denver since Peyton left, which has been muddling through the AFC West and hoping they get a few lucky wins against the Raiders.
Right, trying to fit in that, I guess, with the 17 game schedule, 8 and 9, 9 and 8 range is what they're going to be aiming for. I think that Teddy Bridgewater is the safe pick for the Broncos because he's the type of guy that's not going to lose you the game. And I think that's what they need because their defense is really good. I mean, their defense is fantastic, especially with Vic Fangio controlling it. And he's the type of guy that won't turn over the ball. He's not the most exciting quarterback. You're probably not going to put up 30 points, but you might put up 17 and win a game 17-13, 17-10, I think he's a safe pick.
Give away free defensive touchdowns on picks.
Right, exactly. Whereas Drew Lock is that kind of guy. Drew Lock is not the guy in Denver. and they kind of just got to figure it out from there. But I will say you're right on Philip Lindsay. That was really confusing. Why they just decided, yeah, let's go all in on Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon is one of those running backs that I've been saying is overrated for years. I think before this last Broncos season, he was averaging 3.8 yards per carry or something like that in his career, which is not exactly exciting. But if you look at this offense, Denver Broncos got some pretty nice receiving threats in there, and they just need a guy to get them to him. Cortland Sutton, very good, missed all last season. Noah Fant, really good. Who do they have? Jerry Jeudy. He's going his second year, very talented. KJ Hamler is like the fourth or fifth option, and he's pretty talented himself. These guys, Broncos are pretty talented, and they just need a guy to be able to take the reins and win them a couple games. And Teddy Bridgewater is not that guy, but he's definitely a better option than Drew Lock. All right, now for more of the jobs that are a little bit up in the air. Who will win? All right, so we got Andy Dalton versus Justin Fields in Chicago. What do you think?
I'd love to see Fields play and start the season because I think Bears fans deserve that. After the Russell Wilson fiasco that was the preseason and before that. But with the coaching and management of the Bears, I think we all know Andy Dalton's going to start this season. Which, is going to hurt Chicago fans. They deserve better. But we'll see what happens. I don't think that the whole situation is going to be managed well at all, just because of how Chicago has run. I mean, the Raiders are now in serious talks with the Bears to take Khalil Mack back, from what I've been hearing. So it's just Chicago's kind of not quite in the same situation the Jets are in, but also in a similar situation that the Jets are in, whereas they have talent, they just have no idea how to use it. And I think that's what's going to end up. The Red Rifle Field situation is just going to be fumbled poorly from the start, and we'll just see mismatch, garbage throughout the season. And hopefully, eventually, Fields can just step in and take that team. Again, another team with great threats that just needs someone out there to be able to get them wins.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. It should be Fields' job. He should just step in there, and they'll have him figure it out. And it might be ugly at times, but that's how it's supposed to be with a rookie quarterback. But with Nagy and Pace in there, they need to extend their tenures. Nagy's only chance of being back next year is if he puts in Justin Fields late and he shows some kind of spark, and then they decide they want to keep the coach and quarterback together. So they're not going to start Fields right away. They're probably going to go with Andy Dalton and use that as kind of a leverage chip later on to be like, oh, look what we did with, we still have Justin Fields in our back pocket, someone that we can develop. Give me time to develop him. I think they're going to end up going with Andy Dalton as much as I think that it should be Justin Fields' job. So next up, we have Trey Lance versus Jimmy Garoppolo on the San Francisco 49ers. Who wins that job?
I do not know, because the Niners have been very even-keeled about this. They haven't said a lot of stuff. They've leaned both ways evenly throughout the preseason, even during training camp. I think what happens is Jimmy starts the first few games of the season. If Jimmy doesn't perform, it will be Trey Lance's team. And I don't think anyone in San Francisco will be upset with that. Seeing what Lance has done in preseason games, he had, I think, one or two picks. They weren't ugly picks. It wasn't that they were terrible throws. They were just interceptions. But Jimmy G is kind of the guy in that offense just because he can do it, and it is what it is. But I think if Jimmy doesn't perform the first probably 4 or 5 games, it's going to be Trey Lance's team from here on out.
Yeah, I think that Jimmy Garoppolo will probably win. At the press conference the other day, when they asked him if he had a good idea of who was going to they asked him about Kyle Shanahan, saying that he had a pretty good idea of who was going to start. He seemed pretty excited about that, as if, yeah, he knew that he was going to start. Lance, in my opinion, doesn't really look ready to step in that role yet. Again, it's something where it depends on what you believe in. If you believe that it's best for a backup to sit for a year and learn from there, or if you just throw him into a situation. In my opinion, the 49ers are a good enough situation to throw him into. Kind of same way with Tua last year, where the Dolphins were pretty good already. So it wasn't like he was going to get his ass kicked for 16 games, 17 games, you know? So you can just throw him in there and have him figure it out. And it won't be an issue like Derek Carr's brother, David Carr, when he was in there for the Texans, I want to say, and he just got sacked like 5 times a game for 16 games, and it really destroyed his confidence. I think the Niners are a good enough team where that's not going to happen, and it's something that you can throw Trey Lance in there. But the Niners do have kind of championship aspirations. They were just in the Super Bowl 2 years ago with Jimmy Garoppolo, so they'll probably run it back with Jimmy Garoppolo. Last, we have Cam Newton versus Mac Jones in New England. Living in New England, and Connor being a Patriots fan, I know that this is one that hits pretty close to home. Who should win that one? Who do you think will win, and who do you think should win?
I think Cam will win. And I think Cam should win this one. Cam obviously gets hit with Cam's first start of that last season was very similar to Cam of Super Bowl Carolina Cam. He gets hit with COVID, and then I think everyone knows the storyline of the rest of that Pat season. It goes downhill. Cam is not Cam anymore. He gets an off season. From what we've all seen, Cam is back to being healthy. He's looking great in preseason. I think Mac Jones was a very good pick, just because I think Cam has maybe 2 seasons left in him where he is going to be that guy. And having Max sit in this system with Bill, with McDaniels, is a smart call, because we've seen that system chew up and spit out quarterbacks before. Matt Castle, Ryan Mallett got chewed up in that system, and Ryan Mallett, coming out of college, was supposed to be, the next big Ben, cannon of an arm, big dude who can make the throws. He gets chewed up and spit out in New England. He bounces around for a while, ends up in Houston. He was in Miami for a bit, I think. I think Max sitting there, learning the book, watching Cam play, obviously nowhere near the same type of quarterback. I think obviously everyone knows they're polar opposites. I think it's Cam's team, especially coming off being a captain last year. You don't really, have a captain last year and then be like, oh, you're riding the bench this year. Sorry, dude, bye. I think it's the right call, especially with all those new pieces they have up there in New England. I think it's the best bet to get Cam, who's been there before, done it, lead that group, bring them together, and then Matt can come up through the ranks and take that job in another year or so when Cam is gone.
Yeah. Again, I'm kind of lockstep with you. I think Cam will win. But I was wrong about Mac Jones. I'm not going to lie. Mac Jones coming out, I thought he would be the biggest bust in the world, and I didn't know why anyone would take him. And it might be a matter of just right situation, going from Saban to Belichick, 2 very authoritarian coaches. But Mac Jones has looked good this preseason. In fact, just right before we started recording this, I was watching him in the preseason game. I like Cam. I think Cam is a super likable guy. I've never really understood the hate with Cam Newton. Every time I watch Cam play, I just really want to see 2015 MVP Cam on the screen, but that version of Cam is long gone. But you're right. He had a good start with the Patriots last year, and then COVID hit. I wouldn't say it was quite MVP Cam levels, but it was definitely a better version of Cam than we had seen in the past, a healthy version of Cam. And I think Cam Newton offers a level to the game that Mac Jones doesn't, that the Patriots need, because the Patriots are built to be pretty run heavy. They obviously have those two good tight end receiving threats. But overall, I mean, Jacoby Myers and most other teams would be a 2. He's a solid receiver, but he's in a lot of other situations a 2 instead of a 1. I think they're built to run the ball, and Cam Newton is built to be in a system that runs the ball just because of the type of quarterback he is. But yeah, I mean, you're right with the Patriots system. As much as I think Trey Lance should kind of just be tossed in there, Justin Fields should be tossed in there. The Patriots system is pretty complicated to the point where, a lot of rookie quarterbacks struggle with that sort of thing. So the longer he can take to learn and develop into the system, the better, most likely. It's not like the 49ers system, by all accounts, is a relatively simple system to pick up for quarterbacks. Kyle Shanahan makes it easy, which is what makes him a great coach. And that's not saying Belichick isn't a great coach or that Josh McDaniels isn't a great offensive coordinator. It's just two different ways of doing things. All right. So 4th and goal, one more opportunity, one more question. Because the NFL season starts officially next week, I believe, right? Next week is week 1. Oh, I completely forgot to add after the Dak Prescott thing. Quick reaction to JK Dobbins getting injured. What does that mean for the Ravens?
It's not good at all. I think they have another Ohio State guy sitting back there, right? Master T. Is he that their backup up there in Baltimore now?
I think it's supposed to be Gus Edwards, but after Gus Edwards, it's like a variety of people.
Yeah, I am concerned if I'm up there. You no longer have Mark Ingram to fall back on, which is a scary thought up there in Baltimore, because that is a run-heavy offense, and not having a solid guy who is JK Dobbins. I mean, Mark Ingram, let's be honest, wasn't a 3-down back. He was a guy you put in on 2nd, 3rd, and short to get you 4 yards. JK Dobbins was that answer of a 3-down back in Baltimore, which they need. Lamar has progressed a lot, but they still do need a guy who can get them yards, either catching or running out of the backfield. And that's a huge loss up there in Baltimore.
Yeah, I think that as good as Lamar is with the ball in his hands and making people miss and maneuvering, you still don't want him running 3 downs, because that's just, no matter how good he is at avoiding contact, that's just recipe for injury if you're going to run him every time, if he's going to be your main rushing threat. That's why, like, even when he led the team in rushing, you still had the Mark Ingrams back there. Gus Edwards, solid running back, and he'll do perfectly fine in that role. But I feel like J.K. Dobbins had the potential to be electric. Like, he had the potential to be a real dimension of that offense that people had to consider. So now you'd have to worry about Lamar passing, Lamar running, and J.K. Dobbins running. That's kind of gone now, because, I mean, if Gus Edwards tears you up for 120 yards, then I live with that if I'm a coach. All right. Now we're on 4th and goal. Had to cover that because that just happened today. Because the NFL season is starting next week, we're going to do over-under win totals. I chose 10 of them that I thought were the most interesting, and we'll just go through them. All right, so for people that don't know how over-unders work and for the NFL, basically sports books in Vegas, they set up a line of how many wins they think each team is going to get. If the line has a half, so for instance, the Kansas City Chiefs are 12.5, it means that they're not really sure if they're going to win 13 or 12 games, but they're going to be somewhere in that range. So 12.5, you can either bet the over, which would be 13, or the under, which would be 12 or less. 13 or more, 12 or less. If a team has an even line, like Tampa Bay is over under 12, then it basically means if you bet over, you're betting that they'll win 13 or more games, and under, they'll win 11 or less games. So basically, with that summary in mind, we'll go with those two teams that I started with first. The Kansas City Chiefs, over under 12.5 wins. Connor, what do you think, over or under?
I think
17-game schedule.
With this new extended season, I think they get over that 12.5. I mean, we know the Raiders give them fits, but it's the Chiefs with that offense. We all know their defense isn't anything special. That offense wins some games no matter what, when you can put up, 35, 45 points on a dime if you want to. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. They'll get more than 12.5 wins, especially with an extra game.
Yeah, I think they were always in that 12-win range. With the 16-game schedule, you add an extra game, basically add an extra win for the Chiefs. Tampa Bay, reigning Super Bowl champions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, over under 12.
They'll get it. They brought back every single starter they had from last season. I'm not really worried about them with age or injury or anything like that. They have enough guys who can step up, step in. They'll get it. I mean, their division's not strong. Their schedule is not incredibly powerful. They'll probably get it. They'll go.
You think
over.
they'll hit? You think they'll go over?
Yeah.
And say, okay, so you're saying at least 13 wins for the Chiefs and the Bucks. Yeah, I actually think 12 is on the money. If I had the option to, I would probably bet 12 exactly. Because it's Tom Brady, because Drew Brees is no longer in that division, because the Falcons don't really look like they know what they're doing, and because the Panthers, have Sam Darnold running the show, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks go over. So I think, I'll go over. I'll go with 13 wins, as long as Tom Brady's still Tom Brady, and there's no reason for us to think that he won't be. They'll probably be in contention for the Super Bowl again. All right, Baltimore Ravens, over under 11 wins.
They might go under with the loss of Dobbins, like we talked about. I think that in given Gus might blow us all out of the water and go have an incredible season, I think they're going to have to rely a lot more on Lamar, which means they're going to have to protect Lamar a little more. That AFC North is looking very good. The Steelers will obviously find a way to win some games. That division is going to be tough. I think they drop a few games. I think the Browns are going to surprise a lot of people this year. They might hit it right on the money and get 11, but I think they might go under this year.
Pre-Dobbins injury, I would have been surprised at this line, because I feel like pre-Dobbins, they probably should have been up there with the Bucks at 12 or 11.5, somewhere in that range. With the Dobbins injury, I think that they won't do as well as I initially thought. I thought they'd be a 13-win team, a 14-win team. They're always a very good team to, and their defense is to be feared. And obviously, reigning MVP Lamar. No matter what you think of him, you can't say that he's not a skilled player. I still think that they'll go over. I think they'll just hit the over. I think 12 wins suits them pretty well. 12-5, making it in the playoffs. Probably a 2 seed. Probably a somewhere 2-3 seed. I think they'll hit 12. I think they'll hit the over. Buffalo Bills, over under 11.
Over. Yeah, I think they'll easily hit. Yeah, they'll go over on that one. As much as I like the Pats, I don't think they're going to threaten the Bills in the AFC East. We all know what the Jets can do. I know the Waddle hype down there in Miami is huge, but the defense, added a few pieces, but it's not anything special. They also dropped a few key pieces out in this preseason. I think the Bills go over. I think they get a real strong team up there. I think Josh Allen continues to shine, especially with the addition. I know Sanders isn't what he used to be in Denver. He's still a great receiver. I think it helps them out a lot.
Yeah, I think the Emmanuel Sanders pickup is huge for him, despite the fact that he's not the Emmanuel Sanders of 2016 range. I think they'll. It's tough to say over on all these guys because they all can't go over. But I guess that's the reason I picked them, is because they were interesting. Bills, I think, go over. I think they'll probably be the 2 seed. Ravens will slot into the 3 and have to play on Wild Card Weekend. Or actually, they both would because of the 1 bye. I forgot about that. All right, Cleveland Browns, over under 10.5. A lot of hype behind this team. A lot of hype.
I really haven't been able to get on that Browns hype train. Watching Baker in college, for people listening, I also followed college football pretty heavily. Baker in college, absolutely electric. That Oklahoma offense for the past 6 seasons now has been amazing. Loved watching Baker in college. Wasn't super hyped on him going into the NFL. Felt really bad when he went to the Browns and the situation the Browns were in when they drafted him. I think that team has grown exponentially since they've drafted Baker. I still don't think they go over just because the Browns are the Browns. As much as I want to get on that train and support them, they just can't pull it together when it counts.
I think I have been on the Browns hype train. In fact, on an old show that I used to do with Mookie, shout out him too. We did this segment called Bandwagoners, and we hopped on the Browns bandwagon back when they went like 0-16, 1-15. So I've been on the bandwagon for quite some time. I love Baker Mayfield. I loved him in college. Like you said, he was so electric. One of the most fun players to watch. NFL, he's been not quite the same player in college, but I still think that he's a decent quarterback. I mean, look at the situation that he took over, where the Browns hadn't had a good quarterback in 10 years prior to him? If that, maybe 15 years. I'm trying to think of the last Browns quarterback that was somewhat decent. They hadn't had a good quarterback in that long. They went 1-31 or something like that in their previous 32 games before they drafted him. And now he's at the point where I think he's won more than he's lost with them. I'd say he did a pretty good job overall. They have a lot of weapons. Odell Beckham's coming back, which I think could actually hurt them a little bit, because Baker, the splits, as much as it might be a little overhyped, it's something that's real, where Baker is better when Odell is not on the field. And that doesn't speak anything to Odell Beckham's talent, because he's obviously very talented. He's obviously an electric player and can take a slant route 80 yards to the house at any given point in the game. But it's just something about him where it's almost like Baker feels the need to force the ball to OBJ when he's on the field to get OBJ his targets. Whereas when he's not on the field, you see him. Rashard Higgins, Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Austin Hooper, all these guys, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, they all get the ball. Baker's actually underrated at distributing the ball to all his receivers on the field. And when Odell's there, I just feel like he feels the need to get Odell the ball because Odell is such a star. It's really weird how it works, where it's like the star player doesn't actually help the quarterback more than it hurts him. So you know what? That being said, I've talked myself into it. They're going to go under. They're going to hit 10. I was going to say over. I talked a roundabout loop, and I ended up going under. They're winning 10 games. They're going to be 10-7. They'll make the playoffs still. They'll make a wild card, and hopefully they'll make a deep run, because I'm kind of hoping for that to happen.
I liked your point about Odell on that one. Just because, we can go back to his prime Giants days on this one, and he was running around the field with Sterling Shepard and aging, injury-prone Victor Cruz. You're right. That system in Cleveland is built for the ball to be shared. It's built to keep defenses off balance with the amount of guys who can do damage with the ball. And the fact that Odell in his career has been a one-man wrecking crew doesn't fit into that offense in Cleveland. I think Cleveland, if they don't move him soon, he's going to force a trade out, because it's just not working. We saw that the last season he played in Cleveland. I think the Browns, like we both said, do well, but not well enough to, surprise anyone that they haven't already done.
Yeah, they're not going to be in that Ravens-Bills range of 11-12 wins. I don't think they're that good of a team. We got to move on, or we're going to talk myself into the over. Miami Dolphins, over under 9.5 wins.
Under.
This one's interesting. I feel like this one's more interesting.
I'm going to say under, just because that offense has only gotten better. That defense, obviously, they now have a secondary. They've added to Xavier Howard, who, alone was carrying most of that defense. The offense, Waddle, they add Will Fuller for 5 to 6 games of this coming season. We all know Will Fuller will not stay healthy. Yes, he's an absolute nightmare when he is, but he's not healthy for long. They'll get 4 or 5 wins out of Will Fuller. But after that, when Will Fuller's not in and teams are just like, oh, we'll just double team, Waddle and a safety may be able to shade over on Parker, and then we're just kind of gonna sit here and wait because Tua, maybe the Alabama QB, proves us all wrong. I don't think they get there. I think it's not going to happen. It's Miami. Brian Flores doesn't have a job after this season.
Wow. There's a take to just toss out there in the wind. I think it's interesting because of Tua exactly. It's how much do you believe in Tua? And he's going to have to do something this year because Ryan Fitzpatrick isn't there to bail him out, which we'll get to the Washington football team in a second. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a serviceable player. You can win games with Ryan Fitzpatrick as quarterback. It's all on Tua and what he can do. And I just think, their offense is all right. They're going to have to win games with defense. I think Brian Flores is a good coach. I think he'll still have a job after this year. But their offense is okay. It's nothing special. So it's going to have to be a defense first kind of team. They're going to have to win games 21-17, 24-20, something like that, low scoring affairs. And it's a matter of if Tua can win those games. I struggle to believe it. I'm going to say under. I'm going to say they're at 8-9, 9-8 team, somewhere around there, and they're thinking about a quarterback next draft.
Okay, so if we're talking about the Dolphins real quick, huge thing coming out in the past 2 days is that the Dolphins are now all in on Deshaun Watson. I don't know if you've seen this at all, but
yes,
from what I've seen, it is, we're going to go out and get Deshaun Watson, which essentially means, the Texans are asking for essentially half an offensive roster for Deshaun Watson, whether it's in picks or existing players. So let's say, complete hypothetical, the Dolphins figure out a deal. Tua obviously gets shipped somewhere else. There's no way
Tua is going to have to be part of that deal with the Texans.
He is part of that. If he's part of that, I'm taking Waddle with him. If I'm the Texans, that's what I'm going to be asking for because I'm going to want a receiver quarterback duo that's worked together for preseason and in college for multiple seasons. I don't know what the deal with Watson's going to be. If the Dolphins are going to go full bore on this, we're going to see the Dolphins of last year where it's literally no one wants to play there and they're going to rebuild the team again. But who knows? This Deshaun Watson stuff's just all over the books at this point.
Do you want Deshaun Watson if you're the Dolphins? Obviously, all talented as all can be, we've seen what he can do on the football field. It speaks for itself. But with all this off-season stuff going on, I would be nervous. I would hesitate to put my entire offensive mortgage on Deshaun Watson because we don't know what's going to happen with this. If he's found guilty of what he's being charged for, he should never play another down in the NFL again. And are you willing to sacrifice your entire offense and in future the team on a guy that could be gone like that?
Who may never wear your jersey.
Right.
And you're half the team.
So I would hesitate before I did a sort of deal like that. I'd rather see what we have in Tua than risk that sort of financial future on Deshaun Watson. Over under New Orleans Saints without Drew Brees, Jameis Winston at the helm, repaired eyesight and all. 30 for 30 quarterback, no longer. Over under 9 wins.
Wow, that's higher
high.
Than I thought.
That's high.
That is high for what I thought they would be giving New Orleans. Wow. Under. There's no way. I cannot, with a good conscience, as good as Alvin Kamara is, as good as, Michael Thomas is at what he does, I can't see it. That defense will carry them to a few wins. I don't see it. Even now that Jameis can see straight, there's no way that they clear 9.5 wins.
I think 9's a good number for New Orleans because they still have a talented roster. It's the Jameis effect. It's what's he gonna do? Jameis has some great moments and he has some really bad moments. I'm gonna say, all right, this is kind of a weak move. I'm gonna say 9's the right number. If I had to bet, I would bet on 9. It's kind of a weak move. I know we're supposed to go over under. I would bet on 9. I think 9's a good number for them. 9 and 8 doesn't make the playoffs in the NFC. I don't think they make the playoffs, but I think 9's a good number. Let's see. Washington football team over under 8.5 wins. I think that's low.
With that roster they have, I mean, that defense will win them 6 games.
Right.
Alone. And that might even be low for how good that defense is. The offense up there, I mean, it's Fitzmagic, baby. I mean, you can't, you can't count them out. I think they get it. They'll go over. I mean, I'm just so excited to watch that defense play. Cowboy-less, if the Cowboys don't have Dak, or he's not the Dak that we all want him to be, I think that Washington team will have a field day. We know they'll have a field day with the Giants. We know they'll have a field day with the Eagles. I think those Cowboys, Redskins, the Washington football team, which I believe is supposed to be, they're making a decision in the next few weeks, right?
Yeah, I think they stick with the football team.
I think they do too. I don't think the Wolves are going to get it, or whatever the other one was going to be.
It was like Red Hogs or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they go healthily over.
I agree with that. I think they're going to go over. I would like to note this is I'm really working hard for this podcast, also doing a fantasy draft at the same time. So we're multitasking over here. I think they go over. I think that this is tough to say as a Cowboys fan. I think the Washington football team is the best team in that division, and I don't think it's close. If Ryan Fitzpatrick can be average, then I think that they're a playoff team and they win that division. I think 9-10 wins. With that defense that they have, that defense can, like you said, win 6 games by itself. And Ryan Fitzpatrick might put up some clunkers this season, but he can also put up some points.
He's good for 4 games. We all know this. He's good for 4, 350-yard, 6 touchdown games.
yeah. Or he looks like an all-time great for about 12 minutes. The Jacksonville Jaguars over under 6.5 wins. I feel like this is really high.
I think we all saw the meme that floated around of Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence standing next to each other, 1-16. I think everyone saw that. Travis Etienne is not playing this season due to injury.
Yeah.
That meme might be pretty close to coming to an actual event. Jacksonville is Jacksonville. I think a thing that I've come to a conclusion on the past few seasons of watching very highly touted quarterbacks going in those first few picks is if you do not have an offensive line, people for those guys to throw to, no matter how good they are, you're not winning games. Sorry. If he's getting, we saw it in preseason already. I mean, he took like 4 sacks in the first quarter he played in a preseason game. It's, Saxonville is no longer Saxonville because of their defense.
Yeah, I think that's really high. I actually think that they should be flipped with the next team on our list, which is Detroit over under 4.5. I feel like those two lines should be flipped. I don't know why. I have a feeling about Detroit. I think Jacksonville goes under 6.5. I think Detroit goes over 4.5. I don't think the Jaguars are a very talented roster. And I don't think the Lions are either, but I think the Lions at least have a couple parts that you can rely on. The Jaguars don't have anything that you can rely on. So what's your thought on the Lions? 4.5.
I think the Lions can go over. I mean, they'll scrap by a few wins. Jared Goff, I mean, is Jared Goff, he doesn't have the threats he had in LA. I don't think anyone's going to say he does. He's not a quarterback that's going to make your head spin, putting up numbers every week, but he's going to make the throws he needs to make. He is going to have to do a lot of work, though, because that defense is bad, to say the least. That defense is not going to do him any favors up there in Detroit. Love the energy of that new head coach they have up there.
Dan Campbell.
Great, great energy only gets you so far in the NFL before you actually have to start throwing touchdowns and making defensive stops.
I'm going to go over on 4.5 for the Lions because I think they're going to win 5-6 games. So I just think, I don't know. I really have no reason for it other than the fact that I just like him. I like Dan Campbell. Like you said, energy only goes so far, but I really like the energy. I don't know. There's something about him that I like. All right. You punched it in the end zone. Now, at this point, Connor's going to choose to either go for an extra point or go for 2. Basically, if he chooses the extra point, he has to give us a prediction on a game for this week. And if he goes for 2, then he has to answer a trivia question about obviously the NFL in general. So, Connor, it's your choice. Do you want to make a prediction for the games this upcoming weekend, or do you want to go for 2 and go for one of the questions?
I'll go for 2. I mean, what can go wrong in the first week? I mean, we'll see teams derail in week 1, so why not, derail on the first question?
Yeah. And we'll keep track of how well you do on each of them, how well you do on the go for 2 questions, and how well you do on the extra points, the predictions. So your question for this week: the top 10 single-season passing yard leaders consist of some all-time greats. Drew Brees is on there 4 times. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Dan Marino, and Patrick Mahomes are also all on there. All guys that, Patrick Mahomes obviously early in his career, but will be or are first ballot Hall of Famers. However, the list is also home to a more infamous player. Who is the one player on that list that I did not mention? Top 10 single-season passing yard leaders.
Is it Big Ben?
I did name Big Ben on that list.
Oh,
So it's Drew Brees Drew Brees 4 times, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Dan Marino, Patrick Mahomes. There's one infamous player that's on that list of the top 10.
Aaron Rodgers. He'll be on there, right? Rodgers?
Is that your answer?
Yeah.
All right. So the 8th all-time in passing yards in a single season with 5,109 yards in 2019 is famous Jameis himself during his 33-30 season.
33-30.
He's 8th all-time. Is that not absurd?
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The fact that you can have that statistically poor of a season and be on a top 10 list in NFL history might be one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard.
Just for the hell of it, because it's the first week and why not? We'll also go for my backup question that I had here, just because I also think it's a pretty good one. The top 3 single-season rushing yard leaders go as followed: Eric Dickerson with 2,105 yards in 1984, Adrian Peterson with 2,097 yards in 2012 when he fell 8 yards short. I think that was after injury he did that, or the year before he got injured he did that. Who is third on that list with 2,066 yards in 2003?
2003?
I think there were some early running backs back then that were pretty good. You had Sean Alexander, you had Priest Holmes, Who else did you have? Marshall Faulk. Some pretty great running backs.
I was actually going to go with Faulk, but
I will give you a hint. It wasn't any of the ones that I just named.
It was Jamal Charles.
Is that your final answer, Jamal Charles?
Yeah. Was he in there?
I don't think he was around. I don't think he was around for 2003. If you want to change it up. This one's a tough one. This was the backup.
That one's really hard because there's like a bunch of guys that are like started around that era that I literally can't like think of, and there's a bunch of guys
It was a really weird era for running backs, I will say. There's some weird guys that get involved and have great seasons.
I honestly just want to know the answer to this question because I can't even think of it. I don't know. Guess? I really don't. You're gonna have to tell me this one, Kyle.
All right.
My guess would have been that would have been my guess, but you said it
Jamal
wasn't
Charles. So with 2,066 yards in 2003, as I draft Amari Cooper in my fantasy draft, Jamal Lewis with the Baltimore Ravens. This guy. I don't know what happened that year, but he was actually a pretty decent running back overall. He had 3 seasons with 1,300 plus yards outside of this season. And he kind of hopped around teams. I think he was on the Browns at one point, the Ravens. I want to say the Patriots picked him up for a period of time, but I'm not positive on that. I might be wrong. But yeah, like you said, just some weird guys got a lot of touches in that time frame. And he was one of them.
Because then you go like a few years after that, and you get Charles, Chris Johnson was that next kind of wave of running backs that came into the NFL. And that weird stint from like 97 to like 2004 was just this super awkward time for NFL running backs because it was just it was like there was nothing there. He was just like, oh yeah, this guy, had 1,500 yards from scrimmage and he played 3 seasons in the NFL.
So Jamal Lewis played for what looks like about 9 years. He played for the Browns and the Ravens. The Ravens was when he had that 2,066 rushing yard season. Really, he's in some exclusive company. One of the weirdest lists you'll ever see is the top single season rushers, because you got Eric Dickerson 1, Adrian Peterson 2, all-time greats. 2 of the best running backs to ever live. Jamal Lewis just randomly placed in there at 3. Barry Sanders at 4, another all-time great running back, and you got Derrick Henry and Terrell Davis, and then Chris Johnson. So like some fantastic running backs in there, and then just Jamal Lewis slotted in there with them. A weird time, early 2000s, really weird time. All right.
And we're going to start seeing people on those lists that are really strange, like, famous Jameis being on an all-time passing list, having statistically a horrendous season. I mean, yeah, he threw for 35 touchdowns, 30 whatever touchdowns. He also, and then threw 30 picks. So like we're going to start seeing these stat lines where it's like, wow, this guy, had one incredible season, and then the rest of the time he played, it was, horrible.
Yeah. So you start out the year pretty rough. 0 for 2 on him. Not a great start to the year. All right, that's the show. Thank you all for listening. If you liked it, subscribe to the Clutch Gene. This was awesome. We'll do it again. We'll see you guys next week.